Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me.
Hi, my name's Will, and welcome to Getting to Know You. Every now and then, I take a break from bands and instead interview people within the music industry, the New Zealand music industry in particular, the people who assist musicians in getting their music out to the public. Today, I'm talking to a guy whose name pops up often during interviews with a variety of bands, Wellington based sound engineer, businessman, and producer, Troy Kelly. Troy, it's nice to finally chat with you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, perhaps sort of tell me in your own words what you do,
Gosh, okay, how long have we got? So
as long as you like, really.
I'm all over the music industry in my own world. I, man, gosh, I kind of come from the music side. I would say music is the most important thing. So I do everything from help people build a studio through to making their end product, as in recording, producing, mixing, and mastering these days, uh, and everything in between, helping people learn parts, the works. It's a very, very diverse uh, job, I should say. I just like to think someone walks in the door and I just have an open book on what I can offer to help them. I think in New Zealand, it's a really good skill to have to be able to not be too narrow-minded with your skill set, because it's a pretty hard industry to make some money and to get right into it real fast. So I've just ended up becoming,
Like a jack of all trades kind of thing.
yeah, that phrase was coming into my mind, but there's a bit of a bad ending to that one sometimes, so I tend to not use it.
Oh, really?
Oh, jack of all trades and master of nothing type thing. So
Oh,
it's you know, it's not quite like that. It's more a jack of all trades, and you give it your best shot and you really just be honest about it. I'd love to be right. I'm just going to do this style of music and do this part of the role in this style of music. But in New Zealand, especially, it's not possible, and even potentially in the global scene now, it's not possible because of the lack of money that's coming down from streaming, et cetera, et cetera. So as things have gotten harder, it's made complete sense for me. It doesn't mean that I take any one of those roles any less seriously. Part of the reason why I don't really sleep much is because of that. So it's yeah, I mean we can get into the individual parts of it as we go through this interview, but yeah, I do everything, man. Absolutely.
maybe we can wind the clock back, and maybe you can tell me I'll start that again.
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, winding the clock back. Could you please tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, when you got into music, and in sort of what way were you introduced it? Like, for example, I was into drums, so I got into drumming, and then I dabble in a little bit of sound engineering stuff, but predominantly I was a musician and became interested in music in a wider sense. But was that how you did it, or were you just sort of did you always just want to be an engineer and start there, or what was your journey?
As you get older, you think about these things a little more, and I've come to realize that I was really, really lucky because my dad was really into music, and he would play music, Saturday, Sunday, whenever he could. I remember I remember the albums, like I remember listening to Brothers in Arms. I remember him showing me Appetite for Destruction. He was into music in a big way, and I remember he would go and buy big stereos, and my mum would lose her mind and that sort of thing. So I was always around good music. He actually had quite good tastes at the time. So it kind of grew from there. I wanted to play guitar when I was about 10. I got my first acoustic. And then I realized bass was the instrument. It was around the time Higher Ground came out, I think, by Chili's.
Hmm.
And I loved that. And then I used to love the way the bass sounded in our lounge. So it just grew from there. I got my first bass guitar when I was about 14 or 15. And then music in high school. played in bands. I was lucky enough to get to play covers in a covers band in a pub when it was 21 years, the legal drinking age. I was in there, I was 17 years old, playing 4-hour sets, playing all the hits of the mid 90s, late 90s. So really exposed to professional music, I guess, at quite a young age. And then from there, well, actually, at that same time in high school, we had a fantastic recording studio. So I was very, very lucky that the tutors at the high school were just like, hey, here's the manuals, we kind of know how to work it, fill your boots type thing. And I got right in there. And looking back on it, it was actually a really cool studio. It was a TSR 8-track 1-inch recording tape, which today would still be fantastic to own, and a nice English console. So that sounded good. And so, yeah, once I left high school, I was playing music, still interested in engineering, but I actually moved to Auckland to play bass in Auckland and get involved in the Auckland scene. And that was the mid to late 90s. And realized quite quickly that all my friends who I played with in bands, I grew up in Tauranga actually, sorry, I missed that part. When those friends, when we split from high school, they went down here to Wellington to study jazz, and I went to Auckland. And after a year, I was like, holy moly, these guys are smoking now. This is so good after 1 year of studying. So I was like, okay, I'm going to Wellington. I'm going to do what they're doing. And man, did I get my ass whipped. It was hard, man. Studying jazz is so hard. I'm not going to lie. So I did a bachelor of bachelor of music, which is jazz basically, and that at that time on bass and double bass, and really learned how to play properly. And
Wow.
I feel like I did, but yeah, spent a good 4 or 5 years playing the scene, doing the thing, and then quickly realized, embarrassingly enough, I was probably better off just playing covers because you make more money and
Mm.
way less stress. Playing jazz in public with really good players, especially as they are down here in Wellington, is a pressure cooker. It's actually not that far off. Not so much the playing, but studying was not far off Whiplash, the movie, to be honest. So I don't know if you've seen that. Well,
Not quite my tempo. Yeah.
yeah, that was a little triggering, to be honest. But yeah. So I mean, basically at that point, I was like, I'm going to play covers and I'm going to get back into engineering because I really enjoyed that and I felt like I was good at it. And I actually did a couple of projects down here playing, and the recordings were pretty bad. I could tell the engineer had already checked out and wasn't interested, and I was like, man, I would kill that. So I got back into it and played covers and started buying gear, and got to the point where my wife to be was like, man, you got to get all this shit out of the house. It's just too much coming home to a house stinking like musicians. We've been sweating in the room all day with all the windows shut because we don't want to piss the neighbors off.
Mm.
2004, 2005, I opened my first commercial studio. And ever since then, it's been 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, kind of servicing I'd say servicing, but working the Wellington scene, recording bands, recording everything. And between then and now, so let's say 20 odd years, 3 studios. Landlords quickly kick you out, so I learned pretty quickly about that. And now, where we are now, the studio is long term, and we've kind of, for the last 5 or 6 years, actually longer than that now, probably 10 years actually, been doing post production at a proper international level. So it's been really great. So I'm able to, work on streaming projects for the streaming platforms, and then do music in the weekends, and yeah, get right into it. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Still playing bass, still got way too many basses, but not gigging, and yeah, not so much gigging these days. Although getting the itch again, I can tell you, definitely.
We're up to the Armory, which is where you are now.
Yeah.
How long has it been running, and what services do you provide? I mean, you've kind of touched on some of the things you do, but perhaps specifically, what does the Armory provide?
Or
should I say, what do you provide at the Armory? Better still.
The best coffee you're ever going to drink in a studio. That's number 1, 2, and 3.
Sold.
Everything from recording drums for a local band that want to take them away to ADR for a feature film. So it's quite a lot to cover, mastering, mixing, the works. So all the other studios were built for t touring engineers. So, you have to make it suit every kind of scenario. And
Right.
when I built this place, I was like, I'm building one for me. I'm going to make the routing how I want. I'm going to make everything how I want. And then it kind of blew out because everyone just fell in love with the sound and the vibe and keep coming back. Like people will come in to do one song and then they'll be back 6 weeks later to do another one if they're doing drums or something like that. And because it feels more like a bar, not a studio, like it's very chilled, warm vibes. All of the corporates love it. The international talent, love it because studios can be typically pretty bland and pretty
Sterile.
cold. Yeah, and I was just not doing that. I was like, no, this is just going to be a place where I could imagine I could spend 6 weeks making a record, or if that'd be lovely, but more like 5 days. But it's more about the, it's more about the vibe. So it's kind of grown. Like I didn't put it this way, I didn't build the studio thinking, okay, I'm gonna go after all the Hollywood A-listers when they come to town. It just kind of happened that they came here and then they fall in love with it, or that um when a when a band comes through town, they tag a day in here to do some drums or something like that. It's kind of like that. So yeah, do everything. The control room on a technical level was designed to do mastering. There was no I built the place so there was no design angle spared because there was no labor cost. It was all just me doing it. So it's incredible. And anyone that comes in this room or that's been in this room would totally agree. And even I have even engineers and producers that come out from the States that bring projects back here that aren't from New Zealand just to do them in the room. So they'll come out, they'll do like a movie that's a New Zealand movie, and then they'll come back 6 months later with a US based project to just spend a week in here mixing.
Well, I was talking to a band. I think it was what was the band? Seismic State, I think it was,
Yep.
and I think you were helping them in sort of producing some of their tracks that they've recorded recently. And they mentioned that you would even go to their practice room and listen to the songs and do the whole pre-production thing. And I've never heard of anybody at a studio doing that. Like usually the pre-production or the production, like usually you go into the studio, you play the song, and then the guy goes, "Oh yeah, have you considered adding some strings here or a backing vocal here, or do you think the verse is a bit short?" But to actually like go to their sort of little practice room and watch them and sort of discuss it there was a little bit out of the box thinking for me. So is that something that you normally do, or was it just for them specifically? Or
I've definitely done that multiple times. So with producing, I look at it like producing is one of the skills that takes every single skill I have from being a musician, being an engineer, being a producer, I guess, being a mastering engineer, everything. And you have to go into a role as a producer and think, especially if you own a studio, because, the studio costs is kind of, you know, should we say, not a big part of the equation. Like I do a set fee for a band. I say, this is the fee you will pay for a song. So they know going into it, that's all they have to pay, which is an important part to point out. So when I produce a song, I can hear a lot of people going, "Oh my God, that's crazy." But it's different when you own a studio because you can kind of mitigate the time. But a producer, a proper producer looks at the band from a very holistic point of view, like at 360 degrees, and tries to understand where the band is, what they're doing, where they need to go, what's their direction, do they have the right gear? Does that bass player even have the right bass for the sound that they think they're trying to get? So there's so many things, and there's no way I can do that personally if a band just comes to my studio and we just put some mics up. So I'm going to their rehearsal space to check out the dynamic of the band, check out the gear, check out the way they sound. I would have, before I get there for the first time, I would have already had them send me the demos, and we would have had a meeting in here usually to go over the direction, the vibe we want to get. And I will listen to the demos and make notes that I want to go over with them. I try and make a plan that's like trying to get us to their goal, but rather than overwhelm them, I look at it and I personally make steps of like, okay, we're going to have four. Sometimes I think with Seismic State, it was 3 or 4 times that I went to their practice room, and I kind of go, okay, this first meeting, I'm just going to test the water and see how it goes and offer some the things that are the most obvious for me. Usually it's things like tempo, you're probably playing the song at the wrong tempo. Most bands, not most bands, but some of the sort of starter outer kind of bands usually get the tempos wrong. So it's the tempos and things like that. And I worked my way through the list over 4 or 5 meetings to get them ready for the studio. With Seismic State, I think I offered quite a lot of advice to Matthias, the drummer, on drum parts. I could hear what he was trying to do, but he wasn't quite playing the part that I think he was trying to play, or those sorts of things. So I get in there. I'm super sympathetic too for having someone come in the room and tell someone how to play. And being a musician, I've totally had that whiplash experience. So I'm super careful, and I super like, I just imagine I'm that person that's been told by someone who what to do, so
Mm.
but it works. I feel like I've really got something to offer, so that's why I really enjoyed doing it. And the songs always come out so much better and everyone agrees. And I definitely don't railroad anyone into doing anything they don't want to do. Um yeah, I'm just like I love to just get in there, and I always think to myself, okay, I've been doing this a fair bit now. I've studied music. I've always got something to offer a band. I mean, if a band came to me and I felt like I didn't have anything to offer, which happens, some bands are just ready to record. I say, you guys don't need a producer. You just need me on the day as an engineer. Or we just do some engineering meetings and we just record and mix it and go for it.
We better jump forward in our questions. We're almost at a time. We've barely scratched the surface. I was going to ask you about some of the gear that you've got available at the Armory. Like every now and then you'll post a picture of a tasty Tama snare, or because I'm of course a drummer, so I tend to pay attention to all the pretty drum pictures. So, is there any gear there of note that you might like to mention that you're especially proud of?
Well, the gear thing is just because it saves time. So when you're trying to get a sound, if you have that sound ready, you just bring it out, put it up, and you're away. So it makes the band get their goals faster. And that's why I have so much gear. In terms of particular thing, I think probably what am I most proud of gear wise? I think it'd probably be a Tama bell grasp. I think that's probably like one of those things that when you finally get one and you realize why they're so good, you kind of kick yourself and thinking, well, should have bought that before I bought a microphone or something else. Like that drum just sounds like the 90s albums that we've grown up listening to, and it's ridiculously easy to tune. Like snare drums, it's a snare drum by the way, sorry. Snare drums are quite hard to tune unless you're a bit of a ninja, and that thing just sounds so good. It's just amazing. So I'm super proud of that because um, everyone uses it. And probably the next one would be the um, it's funny how my favorite things are snares. I think it's because you hear it so much on a record, right? It's
It's
the
true.
thing it's just the thing.
The snare changes the flavor of the entire song. Like if you take the Red Hot Chili Peppers, for example, if that was like a wooden snare, it would sound totally different again. It would change the entire sound of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, just the snare alone.
That's why I have a lot of stuff here. I think there's probably got 25 snare drums now, 4 or 5 kits, the works in terms of drums. So it's just sound by association. Someone says to me, "Hey, we want the sound of the first Rage album." I'm like, okay, let's tune the drum to sound like that. Or we want to sound like Steely Dan. I'm like, okay, we can get that. It's it's about having the right tools to get the goal so we can focus on like the takes, the singing, the things that actual people want to hear, as opposed to spending the first half of the day trying to get the snare tuned right, which, I've done in the past, and that's why I'm done with it, you know.
Okay, next question. As far as artists and the like, who have you been working with this year? If the list is too long, perhaps you can mention some highlights.
Well, we've had a lot of drum tracking for people. We do a lot, like a lot of tracking, sort of two, sometimes 3 sessions a week. So this week we've already had Yumi Zuma They're a band that are based all around the world. Drummer lives in Wellington. Two of them are one of them is New York and the UK, so we spent 3 or 4 days with them. I've had a guy, Dan Fowler, who played in a band called um, Disbanded, honestly, Disturbance. They're a quite a famous LA band from the 80s. He lives out here now, so I've been doing 10 tracks with him. In terms of bands, I've just finished Crowns and Lunacy single, their second single, so I recorded and produced that. Um, Going further back, I actually have to look at my folder because I'm sorry if I forget anyone and they're watching this. We've got Libyansky in here. I think you did a video with them.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun tracking drums on their album. Yeah, so a lot. There's a lot.
You also run a company called STL Audio, which sells a variety of quality studio gear. I would imagine that running a studio is a full-time job, let alone running a sideline business like STL. How long has that been running, and what kind of things do you have for sale?
STL started in about, excuse me, about 2002 was when I finished jazz school and realized that all the gear that I wanted to buy wasn't even available in New Zealand. So I started an import company. It started on Trade Me, and it's grown now into like one of the larger kind of e-commerce platforms in New Zealand. But in terms of the time thing, I am just a time ninja. I write lists, I get through lists. I generally spend half the day on that and half the day in the studio. I get up pretty early and get through things and stay up pretty late. I'm a like 6 hours a day, 5 6 hours a day sleep kind of person. So in terms of what that business does, it sells specializes in pro audio and installing pro audio and building people's studios. So again, it's a synergy of what I do in here, and it's the knowledge that I have from engineering that I take to people rather than just being a car salesman. So it's, I've just built this beautiful studio in Tauranga for a customer with a beautiful SSL console and heaps of hardware, and he's loving it, and he wouldn't be able to do it with just an off-the-shelf, here's your boxes, go home and try and make it work.
So is STL the reason you head over to NAMM? And for those who don't know, NAMM stands for National Association of Music Merchants, and it was founded 123 years ago in 1901. It's held in Anaheim, California, and I've always wanted to go, but it is an expensive trip. And it would most likely sort of depress me seeing all the nice gear they have overseas. But what do you do when you attend?
Well, it's mainly actually manufacturers exhibiting their product range for retailers and distributors and wholesalers to go and look at. So we know what's coming in the following year that they're going to be releasing, and, talk about our regions, what we're doing in our regions to help sell their product, and, so forth and so on. It's not open to the public. They sometimes have a Saturday morning where they're open to the public, and it gets a bit crazy. So it's essentially an industry event. You can be invited, like I can invite someone because I'm a NAMM member. So you have to pay a yearly fee to be a member and prove that. Yeah, I think you have to prove, yeah. But anyway, so it's an event where you go, I meet all my distributors, I meet all my manufacturers that I am an importer distributor for, and have a talk to them. I originally managed to get in through begging someone to invite me, so I got in, and that's how I sort of got my foot in the door to get some real brands here in New Zealand. But essentially what I do is I'm going there as a importer and distributor first and foremost to sell product into New Zealand. But the products that I'm looking for is stuff that I feel like people like yourself and me in the studio and whoever's getting into engineering are going to want to buy. I'm not looking like purely from a fiscal point of view or purely from a financial angle of like, oh, can I make X amount of money on this? Some of them you don't even make much money on, but it's such a cool product. You want to get it down here and have a go on it and show people and get into it. So it's probably a disadvantage for me because you do waste money buying stuff that doesn't necessarily sell because no one knows about it. But it's a fantastic show. It's so inspiring on so many levels. As an engineer and a producer, and as a business owner, importer, distributor, like I'll be at the show and I'll walk around and I'll be like, oh my gosh, there's that producer who did, like, I remember seeing Josh, who does all the Lamb of God, and I was like, Josh, I love Lamb of God, and he was like, where the hell are you from, man? Kind of thing. It's one of those things where you just get to, because you're in the door, they know you're hopefully not crazy, so they'll talk to you. And I've sat down, had some great conversations outside with producers who have adored my whole life, and so it's just so inspiring. Come back on a real buzz. Anyone that's seen me after an M show knows what it's like. It's all I could talk about for about 2 weeks.
As you were talking about it, I realized that, I mean, I'd probably go along with a view to be able to buy stuff, but I guess you can't really just buy stuff.
No, so you can place an order, I guess, and say to them, look, I want to buy one. Where's your card? And then you can email them and they'll send you one, but you can't take anything off the floor. Sometimes on a Sunday, if you go at like 5 o'clock, they'll sell something to you so they don't have to take it home if they're from far away. But most of the time it's a bit of a no-no. Um, yeah, it's but it's I've done probably about 8 of them by now, and it's something that's really hard to imagine. So, on a physical size, it's probably it's not as big as it was pre-COVID, but pre-COVID it would have been, I'd say, 4 football fields and 3 levels. So it's like you can't get around the whole thing in 3 to 4 days, especially with the amount of people that were there.
Mm.
You kind of got to push your way through. It's like being at a concert for 4 days without the music. It's just drummers hitting cymbals no matter where you go. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next question. This is a personal question. On a personal note, outside of your studio and business life, what does Troy enjoy doing? What are some of your favorite activities?
When I'm not in the studio, my probably favorite thing to do is spend time with my wife and my son so that they don't forget who I am. So, I got a 11-year-old, just turned 11. Yeah, he's awesome. So I love just hanging out with him, playing a bit of Xbox, and just being a dad actually, and trying to make sure he's, growing up good, and just family time, man. And listening to music in different environments, which is probably more work related, but checking out music on, yeah, just trying to relax.
Are you one of those people that sort of takes their work home and is constantly, because I mean you've got the STL audio thing on your mind, you've got the studio on your mind, you've got customers and sort of producing ideas in your head, perhaps buzzing around. Do you find it's easy for you to sort of unwind and just have you time, or is it always on your mind?
Uh, I'm better these days. I can just switch off because STL's been 20 years now, so I really do know what I'm doing there and how to look after people and what it entails and that side of things. So it's not really that stressful. And like I said earlier, it's just lists. I've goals. I actually sit down at the start of the year and write a whole year of goals and put them in a diary, like on the month. So this is what I got to do this month. This is what I do. So I'm actually able to know that in the back of my mind, I've got my plan. Just stick to the plan, and we'll be fine because I thought about it quite intense. The Armory is a bit different. Sometimes after I spend a whole weekend in here, you do struggle to um, stop hearing the song in your head and things that you think you could do to the song when like Kay, my wife's talking to me. Sometimes I struggle to just switch. It takes about an hour to come down. I do find that when I go on a holiday, it takes me about 3 or 4 days to just to declimatize to working so hard. I do work really hard. I do, like I said, like I will do 16 hours, 18 hours a day, easy, 9 till midnight, 9 till 2. Um, but it never feels like a job to anyone that thinks, oh my gosh, it's not like I'm an accountant in a government department, it's like it is cool. I sometimes have to tell myself to leave this room because I'll just stay here till daylight, because it's so much fun.
There's that factor of it being your business, that you don't mind investing more time in it. It's not
Yeah.
it's not like you're working for somebody else and making somebody else money. It's kind of like it's your baby and you're sort of nurturing it and maintaining it, and so it's a comfortable thing even if it is long hours.
Yeah, well, making a song, as you know, is um not easy and not fast.
Mm.
No matter that's probably one thing that it doesn't seem with being a producer or being an engineer, I should say, the more you learn, the harder it is because the more you realize what you've got to do. So I think that that's what takes most of the time, like mixing and the finer details of a production. because, like I said, I feel onus to do the best I can. So I really do dig in. Yeah, sometimes I think, oh, you know, probably didn't need to spend an extra day on that song. But I don't have any regrets.
I think that's all the questions I have, but I thought maybe because I know that that camera is slightly portable, if you could like flip it around and just sort of show us the basic layout of the room so we can get sort of a 3D idea.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the control room of the Armory right now. So we're in central Wellington. It's a pretty discreet location, which is great. So we don't get bugged today. Not that we don't mind it, but usually in sessions. So here's the console. So this is an SSL 4000. So probably lots of people have got the plug-in version. It's pretty popular console. I'm trying to do this so you can see. So this is the front of the room. So some nice big ATC monitors. If we come over here, it's actually I've been recording drums all weekend, so we're sort of set up for that. So here is some hardware, more hardware on the floor. Excuse me if this is a bit random. It's a little hard on the laptop. Bunch of Neves all here. So this is when I'm tracking. This is the view I have of drum into the room. So I have all of my drum hardware over here, and then when I'm working on the console, I can just spin around. So it gives me the flexibility to not have to reach too far and be out of the sweet spot. Console, I'll take you out to the live room real quickly. So you can see the remnants of a session here. So DW, and then that's looking back into the control room, sorry. We have screens in here because we're in such a world now where everyone needs to see everything, so the screen can rotate around and you can see it when you're playing drums. And then back in here, there's just a vocal booth straight through there. So we put amps in there if we're doing a live band. So when we've done bands, like I produced projects, say like with Lizard Prom. They're a fantastic band from Napier. Guitar amps and bass amps in there, and everyone's out in the live room performing live, but we're capturing the tones of their amps.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, and then overdub vocals last.
I quite like how it's sort of left and right. Like usually most sort of studios, they just have a window directly in front of the console and that looks into the main room. But you've got sort of the ability to have two things going on left and right, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying about building a place for me. So, for instance, I have this trolley it's the workstation, and I can face it into the live room, or I can spin it around when I'm doing vocals and, look at the vocalist and work with them. So it's by design, and it's all got the glass gives you full vision. So if you're in the vocal booth, you can actually see all the way through and see the drummer and have communication for cues and what have you. So it's works a treat.
All right, I guess we should wrap it up. But thanks very much for taking some time out of your very busy schedule to chat with me about you and what you do. I'm sure it was very informative.
Oh, thank you. No, it's fine. It's always great to have these conversations, and I enjoy it.
What's the plan for the rest of the week? I hang on. It's Sunday today, so the rest of the week is quite long.
The studio's got an audio book here with the assistant, and I'm going up to Tauranga to do some pre-production in a studio that I built for someone. So I built a studio for someone who has made an album here, and they decided they wanted to build a studio. So I've built that with them, and now I'm going up there to sort of teach them how to use it and also work on pre-production on the next record. So both hats,
Say goodbye to everyone, and I guess we'll sign off.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. And if you want to contact me or do any recording, the armory.co.nz for the studio, or tkothemusicproducer.com if you want to check out any productions. Everything from acoustic to technical death metal I've actually produced, believe it or not.
Yeah, was it Blindfold and Led to the Woods, I think?
Blindfolded, Carnal, Organectomy, Bullet Bout, Red Dawn, Crowns of Lunacy, they're pretty metal. So yeah, whole range of all that stuff, right down to Boatshed Daydreams is a stunningly beautiful acoustic project that I worked on. Boatshed Daydreams. Yeah, so the whole thing, whatever it is, I'm into it.
Thanks very much for chatting, and I guess I'll speak to you at some time in the future. Cheers.
Yep. Thanks, mate. Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Thanks for watching.